Thanks everybody for joining in. I'm looking forward to a good discussion, and it's going to be interactive. We have a few slides, but it's always better when we get content questions from everyone. So with that, I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right, guys, there we go. A couple of seconds, but this is the art of developing teams is the topic as was provided on the VP and CISO for Invitation Homes, single family home builder in the U.S., headquartered in Dallas. We have over 85,000 homes in the U.S., and our key point is leasing those homes to families, and we make a house a home for the family. 85,000 I mentioned, California, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, Florida, Carolina, sprinkling in Illinois, and then in Minneapolis. Now, that being said about the company, I always have to do the disclaimer: the views and opinion expressed in the following presentation are those of the individual presenter and should not be attributed to Invitation Homes, its directors, officers, employees, or any organization where the presenter is employed. So now that we said that, now we can get into the good content for the discussion. I'm hoping that this point on developing great teams will hit. And a couple of bullets right here on slide 3 for you. The advancement in technology, and that's the driving force that we're dealing with. The resources that are coming on our team, and we're talking about developing the teams in their academic training, their lives prior to coming on board with you has been more about maintaining a balance, that quality of life. And yes, guys, we say it, but think about developing that team. And this can also be for some of the experienced veterans on your team. And I love sports, so you're going to hear me use a lot of sports analogies during the presentation, but it's just to drive home the point. One of the concepts that I noticed, and it has been a key element, and when it first hit me, guys, it was rough to understand, but the guys coming on work and being on your team, that old idea of being on call for a traditional break fix, man, that didn't hold well to some of the newer talent I was bringing on the team. The older guys thought it was good, or the veterans, I should say, thought it was good. All of us, we may have gone through that point where you've been a firewall administrator, network administrator, you get that proverbial call at 2 a.m. But the guys coming on board now, they may not think that is a badge of honor. We thought it was good. They don't look at it right like that anymore. And that's a real key point, because you are a leader and you're developing the folks. Understanding the human side of people is so essential. And drop down to that second bullet right there. The first one was on the people aspect, but then we as leaders, and the financial budget, architecting the system for failure. Again, architecting the system for failure, building in the resiliency so you don't have so much of a break fix. Can it fail over smoothly as designed? Building in that type of strong resilience. One of the younger guys told me that, well, if we had any idea that we could potentially have a problem, why didn't we build that additional set of servers to handle the load? And you know, you have that discussion from a guy just coming on board. It sounds so basic, but sometimes that can get lost in your budgetary work, or how we'll get to a little bit later. You don't want to think about that in that traditional times as a leader. Think about developing the team, that quality of life we mentioned in the first bullet. And we'll get more about that in the next slides. But the financial aspect that all of us as leaders has, and it's a hard fight, going before the CFO, asking for more money, working with the CTO, making sure you design the environment better, building a little bit more there instead of, oh, well, we got to shortchange something. We can just do it with this minimum part. Now, stand true, stay firm, and look to expand the dollars to build for failure. That's one of the key points there. And as we're going through this, by all means, the questions in the chat is useful. Bring those up and we can address those, because it is a good point of interaction between us, because all of us being leaders, we've seen it in different capacities. Well, the next slides, we're going to jump into those aspects of the team. First, understanding your team, deeper understanding. The quality of life is a driving resource, a driving force for the resources coming on your team. Their ability to have life outside of work. They're going to give you 100% while they're there, be it remote, as we are now, or in the office. But man, they want to be able to enjoy themselves. If they're mountain biking, they don't want to have to stop, pull over. If they're in a 5K race, they don't want to have to stop. They could be at a go-kart riding event, or they could be playing golf or anything, or just sitting down with family. When they are outside of that logical office, they want to enjoy their time. You as the leader got to understand that. That oftentimes means how to push and when not to push. Knowing how to slow down the pace of work so it can work for them. And even if they're working 100% during the day, making sure that day doesn't extend until 9 o'clock. When you're thinking about that team and the loading aspect of it, being 100% loaded as far as capacity of work may not be the best way to go. I try to leverage, hey, stay at about 85 to 80% of capacity of load for the guys. Give them that 20% for some aha moments, online training, being able to network and talk with some folks outside of their group, especially in this remote environment. You know, they're not able to just walk down the hall and connect with another department. They have to have some structured time. So allowing for that 80, 85% load and fight for that. Keep that 20 to 15% used for, again, those aha moments. One of those aspects on the team, I utilize vendor meetings only on Friday. Monday through Thursday are time to do the work, but the vendor meetings on Friday. Now, I worked good when we was in the office, because on that Friday, maybe a vendor's going to come in, they could morning meeting. You can't tell a vendor to bring in donuts or pastries or anything like that, a coffee, but a lot of times the vendors would do that because they wanted to network with the team, and the guys became very accustomed to knowing, hey, this Friday, X vendor is coming on board. They usually bring a pretty good breakfast. It was a very good item. Or lunchtime, having a working lunch session. But keeping the vendor meetings on Friday has been very useful for me and my teams over the career. And I utilize it now, even in the virtual work, it works out very well. And yeah, it means that a Friday could be very full of meetings, but when you can structure that with your vendor, oh man, it works out really good. Ability for team building, thinking about how you can work with your teams and build them up with some activities, even if it's online. The last bullet talks about outings or sporting events, but I will submit that some online events is really useful. Maybe it is a game show that you can do online. Yes, leaders are going to spend a little money, find a vendor to help you out with this, but having some mysteries online. Maybe you can do some yoga online or meditation online, setting up those kind of forums to help recognize the people on your team and those little elements of doing a mystery online. Or it was one that I participated in, I thought it was really good. They had the different emojis and you had to change the emoji to the actual phrase. So it definitely brought in some of the younger talent as well as the veterans, and just making everybody laugh. They thought they knew what that was, but they really didn't. And it just created the laughter. And the geography events, you may be able to say, okay, find this building. And yes, some guys may have elements on their smartphone using that, and it just created a whole sense of having fun in this virtual reality that we're in. It works out to be really well. So I really believe that understanding the team, thinking about it from an athletic perspective, you're the general manager of that team. You're trying to get the right talent on there, but you got to have the chemistry. All that team building is to help with the chemistry, because when you have the good chemistry, the technology and the delivery and the service that you're providing becomes so much easier. Now, let's get to a difficult point here, the compensation of your team. Yeah, and I mentioned that as a general manager, you only have so many dollars to spread out for the talent on your team. But that first bullet, and I'm giving you something that I've utilized and I thought it was really good. I kind of phrase as a fast track program that you can maybe bring a person in and identify different mile marks to be achieved in a 6-month period. Now, you want to explain to them that this is the part of the program, how long the program is going to last. You can't do that forever in their career, but for the first 2 years, maybe that'll work out good. And the reason you say 6 months, well, if you're bringing on talent that was previously in school, they're not used to going to a whole year before they get evaluation. If you think of an academic, they're in semesters. They can get the reward. And within that semester, maybe they're having classes that they can understand, multiple test quizzes versus just a midterm and a final. But nevertheless, guys, it's a good way to help bring the folks on board in the compensation factor. Well, if you are thinking about bringing on newer talent, and maybe somebody with 1 year, 2 years, there could be astronomical ask in the salary. And you have not actually seen the person perform. And you as a leader, you're graded on the delivery, not the potential, but the actual delivery of your security services, keeping the company sound. So therefore, think about those guys coming on as rookies, but put incentives to that. Hey, you want to come on board? And going back to that, every 6 months, we're going to give you these key points to get accomplished. I do believe that will help out. It has proven to be really well for me that bring them on, shorter evaluations period with a percentage increase. So maybe the salary wasn't the best at the start, but over time, by demonstrating abilities and getting some of your objectives done, you can have a win-win on that perspective. And I think that's really good. The second major bullet there, it can reignite the experienced resources on your team. Some of the guys that were the veterans thought it was really good to say, wow, we can focus on a task and you get that intensity that you need for that particular assignment to be done. A really nice flavor in changing the proverbial, okay, merit increase or the evaluation after 12 months, what happens? Because sometimes you can do great during the first part of the year, but maybe something went a little bit south in the fourth quarter. Oh my goodness. Last item completed can be the most quickly item remembered. You don't want to get into that. We've all been there during our careers, but this view of maybe 6 months with some points of increase and put a percentage right there that allow you to work. Now, you can't do this in the vacuum, leaders. You have to work with HR. You have to work with, if you're reporting to the CFO, CIO, CLO, you're going to have to outline what you're thinking, but this is to match that competitive marketplace that's out there, but then be able to reward the guys with an increase internally, getting the job done, delivering the services. You have to position that. It took me a good 30 days before it could really meld over with the leaders because it was different in the organization, but I was also able to say, we cannot always match paying the most for someone and then maybe they leave. But with this incentive, that works out good. And the last bullet on there for you, don't forget spot bonuses. If you can't change the evaluation period, the spot bonuses and gifts, And guys, the good old thank you is always, always well received. And make sure you do that thank you in a large forum. Maybe when you have your staff meeting or combined team meeting, making sure that everyone around can understand you're going to acknowledge the delivery of a particular task, the completion of a project by this person in a large forum. That goes a long way. Understanding the talent on your team, the buddy process. In our first bullet, you got to mix the experienced, the veterans with the rookies. I mentioned I love sports, so I had to put that in there. But the buddy process has always been good for me. And do it over 3 months. And don't always just think of within your team. Maybe you have a buddy process for someone that has been with the company a little bit longer, outside of the security group, outside of technology. Go to marketing. Go to HR, go to your service desk. Those areas can be really good because now you get a perspective of not just what we need to do and how we operate within security, but here's some other points in the culture of the organization that can help that new person become more assimilated. And think about this remote environment we're in. We don't have the luxury of just walking down the halls. Let me do an introduction. We're in a different realm, and we have to recognize that and use that in the right manner. Moving our concepts. We as leaders, this is the art, it's a soft science, but how do we navigate this a little bit differently to make sure the folks feel very well and appreciated? Those first 30 days of onboarding is really key. Yeah, what some of the articles say, folks don't leave because of the job, they may leave because of management. We're all leaders. We have to recognize that, taking care of the guys, balancing the experienced members on the teams, the veterans, with some of the upcoming members, the rookies, making sure you have a good balance and they can learn from each other. And keep that as an evaluation point for your experienced veterans that are being a buddy. Put that as an evaluation. How well did they do? Sourcing of the talent. Where are you getting the resources from? Don't forget those internal resources, the service desk, marketing. There are some very inquisitive folks that have been crunching numbers, that have been doing a lot of data analytics that could be very valuable on your team. You may not always have the CISSP, the CISM, all the certified ethical hacker. You may not always have that, but you have a great person that's been working over in advertising that can crunch numbers, or in finance. And where we're at now, being cloud native, man, guys, they're getting a lot of experience. You just need to teach them a little bit more on security. That second bullet there on the sourcing of talent, colleges and universities, increasing your presence at that particular event. You want to attack that talent at that location. Getting out there in virtual forums, getting out to any kind of user forums or user groups, meetups, making sure you're out there so they can know about your company. And finally, as we're thinking about the team development and the talent of the team, diversify the talent on your team. Drive for inclusion on your teams. This also includes the inclusion for thought, making sure that the folks can understand that everybody's point can be heard. May not be used all the time, but let's hear it. Let's get on the table. As a point of emphasis, I try to, at all the meetings, before we conclude, we'll walk around the table virtually. Hey, what do you think? Are you good with it? I always look to get that commitment, understanding from the person that they are in agreement, or man, I don't like it, but I can work with it. I do have a different idea. Let's hear it. May not be used now, but let's hear it. Let's table it for the next point, put in the parking lot, and we can consider that as the next time around. But making sure that you can source and increase your knowledge as a leader by the folks around you. You become better as a leader by the folks around you giving you more information. The communication, that last part kind of tied in here. We're talking about the balance of communication on your team. Mention that it's a science and an artful one at that we're having so many discussions, as I call it, 3D and 2D. We were formerly in the office, in the conference room, and you may be in the conference room now and in the offices, but everybody is not. Some folks are still remote. So how do we do that 3D and 2D? Be mindful of Zoom fatigue, eye fatigue, sitting fatigue, just online fatigue. Be mindful of that as a leader. How you break that up, you have to have your finger on the pulse of your team and discuss those points. Making sure your meetings have the clear agendas. In your meeting, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, not 15, 5 minutes ahead of time, just for a health break or just to stretch. That allows you to go get that afternoon cup of coffee or the morning cup of coffee, whatever the case may be, but try to end the meetings a little bit earlier. And the art of communication, that aspect of building your team, that is a strong element that becomes very much in the professional development of your resources. If you keep in mind how to communicate and the perspective of all the folks on your team, that I believe is a very, very helpful item in how you develop the great team. Because truth be told, guys, when you're developing your team, you don't know it's great at the beginning. Great comes from a historical view of the team based on the performance. When you first bring them on board, you feel a good chemistry. You say, I like the way this is moving. We have a good talent of, it could be some cloud veterans. It could be some younger guys. It could be some guys good in policy development. It could be some good customer service guys. That aspect is what you get in the beginning. And then as they meld together, you go through the storming, norming, conforming, and performing elements of a team, but you can feel the beginning part of the chemistry. The greatness happens after you've delivered that service, that project that has gone on well, or just maintaining the very sound security posture for your organization. The other folks will call you great. You're looking at the chemistry. How does that work? And how are you playing well with everything? Any questions there before we get into the last slide? Let's go to some final thoughts here, because us as leaders, we've seen a whole lot in our development, different paths to leadership. But one thing that we always recognize, that people, that is core in our leadership, how we're developing people. I think back on what I try to leverage, that, yeah, you're gonna have some folks leave your team. And this is the art of developing. It's continuous. When a person leaves your team, that's good for you. If talent is not being poached, asked for, searched upon, maybe you got to go back and developing the folks in a good manner that they can branch out. Jack Welch and GE, when they was bringing up that leadership program, he had a lot of leaders that eventually left and went to other companies, Home Depot, et cetera, and became great leaders. So as we develop the people, they may leave, and it's good. You got to keep developing the team. One of the points on that first item, college football, they have the students for about 4 years, but it's the program, bringing folks in, how to develop them, taking that raw freshman, develop them in the sophomore, then in the junior. Sometimes they go on to win the Heisman Trophy. Sometimes the colleges go on to win a college national championship. But those coaches are very key in having a program. And you look at the basketball element of that, how they develop people, much more in that realm, well, it's a one and done. Sometimes you may only have a resource for 1 year. But how well did you develop the person? Did they go on? And how well did they contribute? John Calipari, coach at Kentucky, was able to leverage that and develop a lot of his work ethic around the one and done, and where they could just win get to the Final Four, maybe get the championship. Other coaches started developing that. Coach K over at Duke was very much more, I need to start them off 4 years and you develop and you're going to be there. Hopefully, I don't have any Duke folks out there, but his work changed. And I think the folks at Duke enjoyed that, where he could, yeah, let's take some. I may only have you for 2 years, maybe 3. The second thought, what has been that major change in your strategy relative to your team development? Hopefully it's looking at that from the people and getting a little bit more creative. The compensation, guys, I do think is key. You're that general manager of the team. You only have a set amount of dollars. You can't overpay for X and underpay for Y. You gotta balance it. That keeps us up at night, just like we're trying to address all the risk in the organization, having the right applications and tools and processes do that, but you got to take care of your people on the compensation side. That is a key point. And then understanding how much to press on that accelerator for driving change or driving for results. The third item, this is a soft science, but the concept is so dynamic, but it's a soft science, meaning, well, what I'm talking about today may not meet everybody's expectation, but some aspects may. So you have to take that in, put it into your own filter. Use that accordingly to keep developing your teams. And remember, the great team is not going to be identified with you until some delivery is completed, that project, the service, the ability to demonstrate the abilities of your team, the capabilities of all the services that you may have under your leadership. Then that final thought there of the 4, man, team development. Are you taking the time to look at it? Sometimes when something is working so great and you feel everybody getting to autopilot, break it. Get those creative juices going. Or when you see a great application from a vendor and you may be using one less than stellar, okay, we may not be able to approach that vendor yet with that application, but go back to your team, challenge them to say, hey, how can we incrementally get up there? Just don't keep taking it as is. If you don't like that process, hey, let's come up with a solution. Promoting the ideas. Obviously, you're going to have your one-on-ones with your teams. You're going to make sure you can have that point, but also challenge when something is going so well. As I mentioned, break it and see what can occur and move it along faster. You can be surprised by the new element that comes up. Those are the key points I wanted to talk about, guys. I think that this is not net new. However, it is an element that is a different way of being implemented based on your market vertical, based on your experiences. You have to constantly work at this. This is that art of developing as you want to be perceived later a great team. But you as a leader, you're going to have to reproduce that each and every year because of talent in, talent out. But as that leader, you want to make sure that folks say, I enjoyed working on the team. I enjoyed the element of being challenged. There was a different way to be compensated. All those little points go in there. Oh, let's not forget, they recognize us as a human and that we needed a break. Or we had some good online team building and we met up for coffee or beverage of choice, whatever the case may be. You have the finger on the pulse of your team. You know what needs to be delivered. With that, guys, thank you. I appreciate it. I think that the elements, again, what we went through is not net new, but hopefully gave you guys a different slant that you can utilize. And if there are any questions, we'd like to go through those right now.
Yeah, Robert, there's a few questions here. First question is actually from Jamie Pittman. It says, what advice or experience to propose an 80% capacity level to the executive level?
Great question. I will tell you what I had a chance to utilize with that is that when you're at 100% load, it looks good from a resource allocation perspective, but the person doesn't have time to think. They're just going from one to the next, one to the next, one to the next. I said, let's pull back and at an 80% load in time for increasing of skill development. And so I utilize the talent skill development as a point of we can get more done with the 80% load. So that was a key point, making sure the persons didn't have burnout. Looking at giving the person time for education. And I even utilize the point of any folks on your team have their CISSP. Hey, you got to get your CPEs during the year. You don't want them doing that during the evening. You want them to do that during the time at work, because you're also promoting that you have a CISSP on your team. That balance right there hopefully can help out. That's what I was able to use, and it was very strong to resonate burnout. The HR folks could pick up on that, and increasing the talent development. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. That's great. Great answer there. Next one comes from Phil Long. It says it helps if you have a good HR onboarding and training programs that you can enhance with department-specific individual development plans and team building. Doesn't developing a great team require evolving yourself as a leader?
Yes, it does. I will say one of the things, and Phil, thank you for that one. I really enjoyed reading a book. It was called The Phoenix Project, and starting to think of security as a process and evolving to, I grew up in Detroit, had a chance to go to Michigan State, and I worked in the automotive, one of my internships, and thinking about the flow of operations. That car and assembly line never backs up, but the flow forward, understanding the work, understanding how to speed up and slow down. That aspect of evolving into a leader and understanding how to have a process flow. So when there is a departure on your team, one of the key points on that one, Phil, I enjoyed it when my team said, hey, we have somebody leave, but our processes are good. We can still keep up. And that became a key point. So we'd love to have great folks on the team, but think of the team, not the person, not an MVP, but a championship for the team in the process flow. The Phoenix Project was a great book, quick read. Not trying to promote one over another, but I enjoyed reading that, and I found it to be very helpful. And this two of the parts of that book, the Unicorn Project and the Goal, they all worked out well. And even asked some of my team members to read that also.
Great. Thank you for that, Robert. So another question that we have here was having to do with what you just said, and this is from Peter Wynn. It says, in the environment, how do you deal with the Great Resignation? Is there any tips there other than, like you said, just continually having some solid processes there?
Man, the first part, I had to sit down with my CIO and say, hey, this is a very competitive environment. I used the sport analogies. I said, in the past times, the Yankees buying up talent. I mean, I said, you can't, long as we can have the exit interviews consistent and making sure that we getting good feedback. Was it an inability to grow? Was it an inability to be recognized? Those kind of points are not coming up. So in your exit interviews, you got to capture that information to see if are there any tangible items up under your control. But if $1 is being floated to a young person and they have student debt and they have these other items and the dollar looks so appealing that they will leave, and set the tone with your leadership that this could happen in your environment more than other spaces, that we could have a loss of talent. However, that point on the 6-month evaluation, putting some percentage increases there. So that new person coming on board, maybe getting X dollars. Maybe you couldn't pay that initially, but if you bring them in, maybe X minus 0.25, and then you start doing 6 or 4% increases every 6 months for the next 2 years, set that commitment for them to be retained, but yet giving them a sense of growth. And a little bit of the magic is that if they're getting 6 evaluations every 6 months and getting an increase, you're potentially hitting that increase before the end of the calendar year that could help out with a bonus. So I'm not sure of your structure, but there are some intangibles there that allow you as a leader to maybe get a little bit more competitive instead of paying the lucrative dollars at the very beginning for untested, well, I'm not saying they're not loyal, but they haven't been tested yet. So you have to
Unproven.
balance that. Unproven. That's a great one right there. That
Yeah.
6-month increment, putting them on a fast track, that has worked out well for me.
I'm interested in this as well, being a leader here with Sync. One of the things that I love watching are kind of the TED Talks. One of my favorite ones that I read is, it's employees not only look for the dollar, but they want autonomy. What most people want when surveyed, they want autonomy to be able to do their job. And there was actually a point here that Jamie Pittman made in the comments. Says one of the things that she's done with their team is asking the team what they want to learn or experience, because holding that team member to a specific function kills that desire and spirit. So any thoughts on that as far as like allowing them to expand their breadth of knowledge and giving them kind of the keys to the car to see what they think is best? Or
No, I think that is a great one, and thank you, Jamie. From my perspective, what I try to really emphasize is when you're doing your objectives, I tell my team that when we're doing the objectives, it should take us an hour to set the objectives for the year. Mid-year review should be 30 minutes. End of year, 15 minutes. During that portion of time, your idea, you're going to implement a SIM. In mid-year, it should be, are you on track? Give me a bullet point, no War and Peace novel, on track, in progress, halted, not complete. Give me something like that. And I'm holding them accountable during that point in time. And in between there, you have your one-on-one sessions. So therefore, hey, I want you to understand what you want to do. And in that objective setting, it's not always just for the team, but what do you want to do personally? If you're in an organization, do you want to have a ride along with someone in another department? I let them come up with that kind of point on their personal objectives and holding them accountable to that. It's up to you to also identify what you want to do. I want to set the avenue. Yes, I support that. Let's try to get that ride along or sit with a person in another department. I'll get it structured with that leader. Now you need to go make the connection. So you make it interactive on that to allow them to have a good point in their evaluation. Yes, you have some key elements from a departmental perspective, but yet you give them a chance to grow. And another item that I utilize is that I'll let each one of my guys on my team lead a project. And I say, I'm a member of the team now. Don't give me too much because I got some other items to do from a leader perspective, but I also need to be on the team to see how are you conducting yourself as a leader? Is what we talked about initially being really portrayed when you take over the realm as a leader? So me being a member of the team, I can understand, is the person identifying the right objectives? Have they identified the right timeline? Are they having the right status points to figure out a roadblock? And what do they do with the roadblock?
Interesting. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, do you, as a leader or as a company, do you then, help them to either pay for programs that might, advance their career if it's in a different realm, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, some aspects are going to be through your HR, how you're doing with educational support, but I encourage the team constantly to go to events. I encourage the team to go to an event with me. If it's something in the local DFW area, I say, hey, I want you to be a part of that meetup, and eventually I want you to have a speaking spot over there. Go ahead, step out, work on your presentation, work on your networking skills. Now, if they don't want to be a speaker, that's fine, but I do encourage them, and with the dollars that you have in your budget, you want support if you're going to continue education or if you're going to get your certification. Say, hey, we're going to definitely support you on the certification. We're going to set you up with the training. We're going to pay for the first test. But if you don't pass the first one, now maybe the next one is on you. So you put a little bit of incentive there to say, hey, we're just not going to keep paying for this. First one is on us. The retake, if you have to, that's on you. And I will say this, when they achieve that certification. Man, as a leader, make a good announcement about that. Let everybody know what's going on. Great
Celebrate
question.
victories, right? I like that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, Robert. I mean, again, I don't mean to deter from your presentation, but we host events. Obviously, pretty much everyone that's watching this, and you yourself, we're inviting you to our programs. A lot of times, what we don't see is the people on your everyone on this call, your collective, your staffs, right? That maybe that next up and comer, or if you can't make it, sending someone in your place so that they're still bringing the information back to the organization. And as much as you all benefit from our events, we'd love it if it was more of that family atmosphere where it's your team, right, and they're representing you, and that also I think can help them, right, not only you but them.
That's a great item when you get invited as a leader to go to different events. It could be a dinner that a vendor is hosting. Every once in a while, you're making a 10, but send somebody else. Let them go have a good dinner and let them come back. And while they're there, they're representing at that point in time. And I tell this to all of our team members: when you come on the team, a part of that development, and it's part of the soft science, we are unified as a team. Now, when you're in a meeting, don't tell your colleague, oh, he forgot to say this. No, let me dovetail on that point, show unity in the customer setting, be it within the company or outside. But you also tell the team member, when we close the door internally, we will have a good discussion, and it's only professionally. We never touch anyone's character, but it's only professionally. Iron sharpens iron. If you said something that, man, was technically incorrect or not in the direction we're going, we need to make sure we're on the right pace. I'm going to challenge you. But when we open the door, man, we're all together. You protect your teammate, you work with them, build them up. But again, I use this a lot. Iron sharpens iron.
Love it. Well, Robert, thank you so much for this.